But first, Jacob Hessler met Richard Blanco not long after President Obama asked Blanco to write and read a poem at his second inauguration. Hessler is a photographer who lives in the Mid-Coast. Blanco lives in Bethel, and the two soon decided they'd like to work together on a project.
The result was a book and museum exhibition called Boundaries, which explores some of the things that divide Americans across lines of race, sex, class, politics, and more. Their approach was straightforward. Hessler traveled the country taking photos, and Blanco wrote poems about them. I read that you, and this surprised me, did research on every one of these photos to find out more about the place to inform your writing.
Really, as a team, they gave me also a lot of sort of historical background as to why this photo and where it was inspired from. It was about finding not just the data, but the emotional connection into the poem, into the photograph, and sort of bring it all together.
Was Richard asking you a lot of questions about the photos, or did he sort of leave you alone?
Yeah, a couple, and I think it went back and forth. We both, I think, started the project with each we're going to come, with our laundry list of subjects we wanted to cover and talk about, and then sort of as just the logistics of being able to travel to the places and take pictures of them, and just what resonated with you. Like you'd go down a hole and you'd be like, I can't do this picture, let's do something else. And I know a couple of poems definitely kicked your butt. A couple of photos that I had to respond to your photos that were really challenging, but I think for both of us we grew a lot, and but yeah, a lot of research into all of these, because it wasn't just not in the business of making just pretty pictures, but the picture has to kind of communicate a deeper meaning.
You got pretty good experience with Boundaries in just the first few years of your life, and you really didn't have anything to do with it. You were along for the ride. Now correct me if I've got the chronology right. You were taken with your parents from Cuba to Spain while your mom was pregnant with you. Just a few days after you were born, your parents left to go from Spain to New York. At age 4, you moved from New York to Miami, where you grew up in a Cuban-American society.
Right. That's pretty much it. Or more concisely, as I like to say, it was made in Cuba, assembled in Spain, and imported to the United States. So the idea of borders was a conversation I've had in a much more private, autobiographical way. And this was a way to think about borders and about home and belonging on a much more historic and at a national level, because it really covers a lot of ground in just 12 poems, 12 photographs.
In taking the photographs, you were getting a keen sense of place because you were traveling around the country, putting thousands of miles on the car, going back and forth across the entire length of the U.S.
Thousands and thousands, but and a lot of pictures that we took entire trips to go to didn't even make the book. This project explores how we're kind of dividing ourselves from one another, but when you're kind of there speaking to people one-on-one, it doesn't really feel that way. It only feels that way when you kind of have these groups of people that have charged each other up, and everyone feels safe in these numbers.
You had a theme, boundaries, and then sort of sub-themes, race, class, gender, divisions in America, and so forth. When it came time for you to sit down and write the poems, did they come easily, or was it difficult?
It varied. I think, as with all work, I think one of the hardest ones to write was one about, it was a photograph of Herndon Avenue, which is the site of the last recorded lynching in the United States. And it was the very first poem that first photograph I picked, and first poem, and it just kicked my butt. I was like, oh my God, what am I in for? This is going to be, and that was a struggle in part because it was a poem that I had to sort of dig deeper into thinking about race, and a poem I didn't feel I had the emotional authority to write.
You knew the theme, boundaries, when you would stop the car, get out, pull out your camera. What was sort of running through your head about what you wanted to try to capture?
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, always with my work, I do try to leave this sort of emptiness, whether it's actual negative space in the frame or if it's the suggested emptiness. It forces us to dig deeper and look deeper, and I think that's what I try to get with my pictures, is give enough emptiness for then that you want to dig deeper. You want to go into those images and try to figure it out.
Do you guys have any interest in doing another project together, or are you good for a while?
I would entertain. Yeah, no one's asked it yet. We're just still getting this out there, taking a breath. But
actually, as long as you're here,
let's negotiate.
I'm actually thinking, because this is a limited, fine press book edition. He can describe it more than I can. This paper, the binding, and all this stuff. So it's kind of it's an art. It's like buying a print. It's an art piece. And I was thinking, if we do a trade version, to expand with some of those more of the photographs and more poems and make it a little more ample. So that way, I just sprung it on him now.
Sure. But yeah, but
you got the photographs.
I got them, yeah.
I love it when people do business dealings right in the middle of our conversations.
You should get a cut in that, I think, being witness to that.
You know, I don't think
commission.
I don't think my contributions really merit anything there in terms of the financial return. Again, the name of the book is Boundaries. That is also the name of Richard Blanco and Jacob Hessler's exhibition, which is on display at the Center for Maine Contemporary Art in Rockland.
And it will be there until May 27th, so you have a little time to enjoy it.